What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first ever episode of Starting Six, a video podcast series, I guess we can kind of call it, of two best friends just finally creating a platform to talk about volleyball. I have been dying to find something that creates a community outside of like Twitter, I guess, is probably the only other one that we can just openly talk about Division I collegiate volleyball. Liv, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I am nervous but excited. We do this every day. We talk every day about volleyball, so now just putting it out there and getting other people's feedbacks and expanding our knowledge and love for the game is really exciting. So,
all right. Well, with that, I'll have you kick it off. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how volleyball's kind of impacted you and where you're at today?
Yeah, so I'm Olivia. I'm originally from Muskego, Wisconsin. Grew up there playing volleyball since I was like 6 or 7. Played club at Milwaukee Sting and loved it there, and then wanted to pursue volleyball in college after following my sister's footsteps. She played at Winona State, and I loved watching her. So then I went to UW-Platteville and started playing, and that's where we met. We were partners in crime on the court.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And yeah, I played there 4 years, well, 3, I guess, with COVID. And then right now I'm kind of in a hiatus of not playing volleyball, which is weird. So I think that's why I'm so immersed in watching volleyball and wanting to know more about it and everything surrounding it. So that's kind of my life around volleyball. Hopefully getting back into it later in life with coaching and stuff. I love it. It brought me a lot of friends and people that I still talk to today, second moms, second parents. I love just the experience of playing with everyone, meeting new people, getting to travel. And it really was my life for all of my life until now, basically. After graduating college, like I said, I've kind of been on a hiatus. So I'm excited to start doing this and to get back into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So my name's Haley. I played volleyball starting in 6th grade. I'm originally from Rockford, Illinois, went to small town high school, played varsity for all 4 years, and just knew that it was like the only thing I was like really meant to do sports wise. Like I guess I ran track 1 year in middle school, but that was like a fever dream and I choose to block it out. So volleyball is really all I ever have done. I played my entire club career with Rockford Volleyball. Shout out. I still talk to all those girls, which is so incredible. I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, I went to UW-Platteville in 2017, and I played 4 years and attended for 4.5. So I was really grateful that I got the opportunity to complete a senior year after COVID. So that's where me and Liv met. We met in the fall of 2018, which feels like a long time ago now, which is crazy, but kind of weird because like we weren't really like friends, I guess you could say, like during the first season. So I'm a year older than Liv academically. So I met her freshman year, my sophomore year. And yeah, it was kind of like a weird like dynamic in general. I feel like it was definitely weird to be like the sophomore and not the freshman anymore, but you're not an upperclassman, like in a leadership role. So it was just kind of like I already had my friends, I guess you could say, that from like the previous year. And so it was like weird not being a freshman, but not being an upperclassman. So it was like a weird like dead space. But I'd say like you and the other freshmen that year were pretty close as like a unit, I'd say.
Yeah, we were. We kind of came up as a united front, I feel like. And that was kind of a unique startup of my college career because there were so many of us and there was not a lot of upperclassmen leadership. And then, coach just kind of threw us in and said, do your job and get on the court. And I think that kind of created a lot of beef with everyone of the upperclassmen or sophomores, whatever. So I think we kind of had to have, like, our freshman group had to have our backs, and like we're really close because of that. And I don't think anyone meant to do that or like have that little bit of tension. So I think that's why we weren't like friends that first season, because everyone kind of had a chip on their shoulder and was like, oh, these freshmen are playing over us. And it is what it is, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's so crazy to look back on now and to kind of reflect on being 18, 19, 20 years old, and like your ego is just so big. Like you can't help it. Like I think this is probably like across the board with sports. Like when you're that young and you come out of your high school being the best like in your class or whatever, and you enter college and it's so competitive all the time. And I definitely think that was the environment created for us, which we can get into at another time, but definitely it's important. But we were put into a very competitive environment, and it felt very like backs against the wall sometimes, I'd say. So it definitely created tension. And I will stand by this till the day that I die. When you're putting that many girls in a small space to be together all the time, you're bound for trouble.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely think that was a unique part of your first year. But then spring came around and the stress was kind of gone, I feel like, with season. And we were just kind of enjoying like just being really young and dumb. And that's kind of where it started. And it just kind of grew from there. But I'd say after that second semester of your freshman year, it was smooth sailing for the two of us anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the rest, I don't want to say, but for the two of us, we were good.
Yes.
So I definitely want to talk a little bit too while we're talking about our personal experience. I definitely want to hear from you about your sophomore year and kind of what that looked like for you, because I feel like you went through a really kind of unique experience with your injury.
Yeah. So that was 2019. Going back to freshman year, because that was also kind of unique. I was recruited as a outside hitter, started as an outside, and then transitioned to play libero towards the end of the season. So going into sophomore year, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to be an outside hitter again or if I was going to be libero again. And coach never really told me. She just kind of said, be prepared for either one. Then ended up playing outside, and right off the bat, pretty much shoulder pain hit me like a bus. And everyone told me it was just, tendonitis, bicep tendonitis. We'll do rehab, we'll do stim, we'll do ice, we'll do the boots or whatever, and hopefully it'll all work. And the pain will be fine and we'll manage it. But that didn't happen, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And it felt like no one believed me when I said the pain was there, because I do have a high pain tolerance and like I can push through it and I'll just play through it. But it got to the point when I could not feel my arm anymore and just had to swing away and hope for the best. But then that came with the price, because then, getting scolded for not having control of the ball when you're hitting, or getting scolded for not playing well because I'm in such pain. And it was a hard thing to handle, because, like being a leader, I guess you could say, having an expectation of like, you're always on, you always have to play well. But then having this pain and you can't do anything about it, but you're still expected to perform at that highest capacity was really hard for me, and not necessarily having the best support from a coaching staff with it. Instead, I think I had a lot of support from our athletic trainers. Shout out to Mike.
Yep. Shout out.
He was a good person, because it felt like he believed me and was trying to do everything that he could. But in the end, I mean, I'm pretty stubborn and just said, I'm going to play and I'm going to play the whole way. And then after season, my pain didn't go away. Couldn't put my hair up, couldn't brush my hair, couldn't put clothes on, couldn't go to sleep without pain in my shoulder. Found out I tore my rotator cuff and my labrum. So I had surgery that January of 2020, and then had rehab for about 6-7 months until that next seain. And it's never the same.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember, you had undergone like a pretty major ACL surgery as well when you were quite young. So I've never personally had anything like that. Like, God bless whoever was looking over me for that. I had more like my new just super annoying injuries, I guess you could say, that like the answer to it was there's not really anything we can do. Like, you know, like you're just gonna have to, that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
And so I never experienced anything like that, but I do remember you know, just being your friend and your teammate. I do remember the you know, being on the outside. I guess I don't exactly know what it felt like for you, but I do remember how difficult that was. And just as like a support system, I just remember feeling very like helpless.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't anything really we could do besides just help you where we could. But you're easily one of the most independent people I've ever met in my entire life. So it was one of those things that I think in a way kind of made us closer as friends and as teammates, because I grew learning what you needed and what you didn't need, and what you liked and what you didn't like. But also I was able to find like that middle ground where I could be like, no, like listen, like I'm helping you, just shut up. Like that's kind of like the point we got to, which I feel like is where we really crossed over into like being where we are today, where, you know, I very much know Liv's not going to like that. Liv's not going to like that. And then also knowing when I have to stop and just be like, I'm helping you put your hair up, and you're just gonna let me. Like I feel like that was very helpful. And then obviously when COVID hit, that was probably one of the worst months of my life, like for sure. That was a very unique time, and I'm glad we got to have the little bit of that time at school when you were in your sling to kind of get like that experience on like a more of like a mental level with us. But man, that was crazy time for you. I remember that, and you came back like a beast, though. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think going through that injury, like our relationship got like stronger because we had that understanding, and like, whereas some people, I would say, just kind of left me high and dry, and because I am independent and didn't want to necessarily stand up to me and be like, no, like you need help. Or then when I would ask for help, they're like, oh, well, I'm too busy. Or, you know, like I had that stupid chair thing that would move my arm up and down. Sitting that for hours a day by myself, and no one would come and hang out with me. And so I think like, but you would, or you would talk with me or FaceTime me or whatever it may have been. And I think like you just kind of sticking through and just being there, where some people are just like, oh, she has to sit in her chair in her room all day, like whatever, screw her, we're just gonna go. And so I think like a lot of people left me high and dry in that moment. Like when I was recovering, when I needed people, like I would just sit and cry in my room. Like it was awful. It was horrible. And you were really the only one to stick through it and like to check in on me. The rest were like, oh, she says she's fine, so she's fine.
Right.
You know, they never like actually asked me. Maybe one or two did, but in general, like, unfortunately, my team, who I thought like was my rock, my family in college, just kind of, oh, she's okay. She'll get through it. She's strong. She can get through it. Like, but there's still thoughts you have. There's still loneliness that you have. And then it went right into COVID, which was even worse, because then it's like we were all away from each other, and it was only through technology that we could communicate. And like that little bit of support system that I had from the volleyball team kind of was completely gone, which sucked as a whole. And like from coach, that wasn't great either. Like not hearing a word from her about like, oh, how are you doing, or checking in, like that was tough, you know. Like the biggest person, the person that's supposed to be your biggest supporter from your team isn't checking in on you. Like, how are you supposed to take that, you know? So
it definitely felt like that time felt like one of those things where I was always a big advocate for the spring season. Like, I just think it was just fun because it was so like easygoing, and just you were just kind of there to learn and to play, and there wasn't as many like stressors on your back, and there wasn't as many talk about lineups and talk about this and those things that kind of tear teams apart. And so it was definitely hard to not have that. You know, that would have been the spring season going into my senior year and your junior year, and it was hard not to have that. And I think that's where a lot of like team building and team camaraderie is created is in that portion of your career, is like that spring season, that off season, like in the weight room and in the gym. And it, I'm sure like you felt pretty isolated during the times that we were there in person, because you were doing just leg stuff or not doing any weightlifting at all. And then COVID hit, and then we're all isolated. And it's like the only times we were really talking or communicating with each other was over scheduled Zooms, and like, like whatever that did for you, I don't know. But like, like it wasn't, you weren't in the gym, you weren't building trust, you weren't building like in an environment that would carry it into your next season, which we didn't even have anyways. But I remember that. I remember that being just almost like a weird time. Like that's kind of how it felt when we were all sent home. It was like, we're still cheerful. Like we were supposed to go to Mexico. Like, we were also like, oh, it's fine. Like 2 weeks, whatever, not really a big deal. And then I remember getting the email or the phone call.
We did that, like, we had a Zoom with everyone, like all of the student athletes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And then we had like gotten an email from whoever saying to get on this to talk about like what fall sports were going to look like. Because I remember like football was on it. I think basketball was on it too, and track or cross country or whatever. We were all in that Zoom, and they told us, and then we went on a Zoom with the volleyball team.
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably hands down the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. So a little bit of background on that. So by the time we had gotten to my junior year, I was the only one left in my class. So I came into Platteville with a class of 4, and by my junior year, it was just me. And, I won't get into like why that happened. It just is the way that the cards fell, I guess. And it was kind of like a fun joke junior year, like, oh, it's just me. I was taking pictures, like we would do class pictures, and it's literally just me, like nobody else. And it was kind of like a fun joke. And I do remember talking about, making jokes about how that senior night's going to be just all about me and da 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 and whatever. And it was a kind of like a fun joke. But I remember when we were on that call, I felt so alone, because I was the only one who had to make a decision on what they wanted to do. Do I want to come back for my 5th year and play, which would be a year and a half from then, or do I want to graduate on time? And at this time, we didn't even know if we were going to go back to school. Like we didn't know this could have been a 3-year thing. So I just remember feeling very alone and very like kind of lost, like when the one thing that you're so sure about, like in your life, and for me that was volleyball, like when that it gets taken from you for reasons so far out of your control, it was like the worst feeling ever. And I think that's kind of where I related to what happened to you in a way, is because I felt so like no one understands what's happening to me right now, at least volleyball wise. There was tons of other seniors who didn't even get a choice, and I don't want to shadow them by any means, but on the volleyball team anyways, like I was like, it was just me going through it, and I felt the same way. That was probably the hardest part of my career, and it genuinely didn't have anything to do with being on the court. It was that was like one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. I feel so bad for all the people who just didn't even have time to figure out what they were going to do. I mean, baseball players that were seniors and set to graduate and everything, like it was devastating. I that was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever experienced. But we came back, and that August we didn't have a season, but we did get COVID. I remember that too, because my true senior year, Liv's junior year, there was just the 2 of us living together. And oh my God, how many weeks into school was it? Like a week?
No, we were there beforehand because we had a fall season. So we were there like 2 weeks early, I think. And we still went 2 weeks early for some reason. And it was like the week before classes started, the team got it because we weren't there for the first week of class.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct. So I got it first. And the way our house was set up, our rooms were across from each other, and there was quite a big distance in between. So we sat, because again, it's just the 2 of us. So we weren't getting a lot of social interaction as it was. So we were like, we only had each other. And so we sat we sat in our doorways and talked to each other across the hallway. I remember that so vividly. And then the next morning we woke up and Liv got the call that she had COVID. So we quarantined together, and our friends and family came to windows and dropped off food. It was like a scary thing at first, kind of. But then once we realized that we were lucky enough to be okay, we were fine. Just literally, I lost my taste, and that was about it. But after that, we were just kind of bored at that point. Like,
so bored.
How many Disney movies can you watch?
Our butts were imprinted in the couch, like perfect spots for each of us. Got really boring really fast.
Yeah, I would agree. And then, so that was our lives for a little while. And then, how many weeks would you say into first semester of fall 2020, until we started training again?
November.
You think it was November?
I think we had September off. I think. I don't know. I want to say November. I don't know why. Because then it just carried right into spring season.
Yeah. So maybe late October, early November.
Oh, yeah. I kind of forgot about October. Oops. Maybe it was October. I was like, no, that's so far away.
We had September off. So we must have been November.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I think
so we get into training again. What was that like for you? Because that was really the first time you were back on a hardwood court after your surgery and everything. What did that look like for you?
It's hard to remember now, but I think, like you had mentioned, like having had a serious injury before when I was younger, I remember being a lot more scared when I tore my ACL to play than I think I was when I tore my shoulder, basically. I knew I just had to do it and just get it done with. The biggest thing was I was scared to go full out because I didn't want the pain to be back because it was so bad. That was my biggest thing. I was like, I wasn't necessarily scared to hurt myself again. It was scared to feel that same pain again because it was so horrible.
Yeah, and we jumped right into it. I remember that. Like, it was like nothing. So by this point, so we had a couple spring practices in March, I think of March of 2020. So like right before we got sent home, we had like maybe one or two.
Yeah, I think we had like two.
So from March to maybe early November, like none of us had, I mean, we had, peppered and we were training as much as we could in home basements and whatnot. But like jumping up and hitting and jump serving and diving, like we hadn't done any of that in months.
Yeah.
Which was probably the biggest break any of us have had since before we started playing. Yes. Yeah. So I remember that was crazy. I remember like the first couple months of that just being like just hell. Like that was so hard to just dive right back into it. Like it's not like riding a bike. Like it's just not.
No.
When you take that much time off, at least for me, it was not.
It was tough. And again, shout out to Mike. Thankfully, he like had my back and was making sure I was taking it slow because I know that coaches wanted me to get back in a little bit sooner because I had such a long time. But, any type of major surgery or recovery, like you're not just going to be back where you were. I had a lot of strength that I had to get back. Like I had to do a lot more strength training in my shoulders to get me back to where I was. And so that didn't necessarily mean like playing volleyball. So I knew that because what were we doing? We would do practices and then lifts right after or something like that. Practices.
Yeah, we were.
Did we practice every day?
We were. So I remember. I don't remember if it was until spring season or not, but for spring season for sure, we were doing something for volleyball, whether that was in the gym practicing. We did like private stuff, like with a couple of us with coaches, or weight training. We were doing that 5 to 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So like even though we might be lifting a day and didn't have practice, like we were still doing physical activity for volleyball, probably 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And before we get into that spring season, how much time would you estimate that the two of us spent in the athletic training room?
Like a week or just total?
Like maybe like that 2020 to 2021, like, you know, kind of off season, I guess. I mean, we were in there and we weren't even allowed to be in there that much. And we were in there every time we could get in there.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
We were icing, we were ice tubbing, hot tubbing, all the rehab, the boots, the ice pack. Like, I remember that we were in there so much.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and then we get to spring season of 2021.
Spring season of hell, I will say.
Yeah, so I want to preface this, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can relate to this, like playing volleyball in college is so much different. And this is at the Division III level, obviously. Neither of us have ever played any higher than that, so can't speak for them. I'm sure it's a little bit more, but I feel like D3 kind of gets like the stereotype that you're not playing all year round. And that's just not the truth. That is not even remotely the truth. Like, you're only in season until November, at least for us. It was always the beginning of November, but for some people, maybe a little further. But like, Division III never went into December.
No.
And I remember, like, when spring training starts, like, you're lifting as soon as you come back from Christmas, and then you have a month of spring practice, which takes you to the end of the year. So like, you're never done. And I remember we were like, even during like before spring training would start, like, I remember us being in the PAC, like in the courts, like we were playing all the time. Like, we never quit. And it was always optional, but everybody was always there because it was optional. So I just remember playing so much. But when that season came around, that spring season, that was the most volleyball. So at this time I was 21. So I was turning 22 in May, and I hadn't played volleyball that consistently, that amount of time, since I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
So like, my senior year club season ended before I turned 18. So like, I'm looking at 5 years since I've done activity like that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. That's a lot to put on your body in general, but for a senior too, like senior, super senior, whatever, like juniors even too. I mean, like, that's a heavy load to carry. And whatever minutes the NCAA and the WIC was allotting, we took them all.
Yeah, it was, because a normal spring season is like 4 or 5 weeks. It's like 15, what is it? It's like 12 hours per week or something for X amount of weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
A normal spring season, we would practice 3 times a week. It would be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But that spring season, it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yes.
For 2 hours. Plus, I remember we hated Thursdays because Thursdays we would have like I think we had a longer practice. It was like 2.5 hours. And then we'd have a lift, a 2 hour or hour and a half lift after full days of classes.
And we get home, and I remember my class schedule on Tuesdays and Thursdays that semester was horrible. I was going all day long. And then we went straight to practice, straight to lift. And then by the time we got home, like, you and I never had a dinner plan or any, like, so I just remember going home and we were like throwing like our bags around, and we were like chucking water bottles, and we were just yelling, and we were so pissed, and we were like, I'm so tired. Like, I don't want to do this. I remember that. That was the spring semester, in my opinion, from hell. It was. Yeah, that was horrible.
Well, not even just full days of classes, because I know I had class and then I went to work, and I would come straight from work and then go to practice. We would go to the training room before practice, lift, do post-rehab stuff, come home, have homework or whatnot to do, have to eat, just be so pissed about everything. It was a vicious cycle of
we were the
hating
worst.
our
Like
lives.
that period of time, like we were just the worst. Like all around, like we were probably just horrible to be around.
Oh, I'm sure. I think everyone was, honestly. I think everyone had it. It was so exhausting. No one had a break. Our bodies were deteriorating. Like, I'm still was trying to come back from surgery and, like, get back on the same playing field as everyone else. So I'm struggling in all aspects. Everyone's either having classes online or in person or hybrid. We have to get COVID tests every week, hoping that no one gets positive again. And it's just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, when you say like that, that does remind me. It was just like a stressful like time. And then that's when I think it started to feel like volleyball, which was always the stress relief, became part of the stresses, you know? Like I think that was a hard thing to deal with like mentally when you don't feel like you have like an outlet anymore. Like my outlet was when I went into practice, it was like, I don't care that I just got a D on that test or, you know, whatever. Like I just could let it all go and then just play a game that I love and wanted to learn and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's when it like started to feel like it was a job.
Yeah.
And less like fun, I guess you could say. But the physical aspect of that was really hard. And it makes me think a little bit like, I'm assuming anyways that at the Division I level, like you have nutritionists and like personal trainers. And like, I think you have like a little bit more like of resource than you would at Division III, but I think it makes me admire those women playing at Division I because they don't stop. Like what we're complaining about, and granted that had the COVID thing hanging over it, but what we're complaining about, they just do. Like that's just like part of the like Division I like aspect of it. Yeah. But that was really hard. So, but granted, we don't have the same resources, I don't think. But oh my God, that was very
and on top of that too, we had a group of freshmen that had never played in a collegiate match before, and
I felt so bad for them.
Trying to build connections with them. And I know we always like kind of had coach breathing down our necks about it, like making sure that they feel acclimated. And it was a struggle because it was their first year of college and COVID and all that stuff, and having to do extra meetings and stuff like that to make sure that everyone's on the same page. It was just nonstop. And like, I remember us never having time to eat, and we would just be shoving our faces with whatever food we had as we're leaving out the door, and then we get like scolded for not having enough energy and all this stuff. It's like, we don't have time in the day to eat right now. And like you said, D1, they do this all the time, but luckily enough, they have those resources that it's provided for them. Like we're just kind of on our own and trying to figure it out by ourselves with this hectic schedule. Whereas I think they're able to do it because they have the supports in place and the resources to help them through it.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild to look back and remember like that class and them training for an entire year for something they've never experienced before. Yeah. That's so insane to me. And I can't, again, touching on like being 18 years old and the whole world's in this state of like what is happening, but on like the athletic side of it, to have to grow so quickly and not have a choice, like that's insane to look back and think about, like absolutely insane. And so season rolls back around and we're back for the first time in 700 some days. Was that what it was?
Yeah, we had a count, something like that.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, it was a big number. And and then my super senior season was underway and your senior sort of season was underway, I guess, skipping junior year, and I skipped senior year. When do you think that, or maybe you did you ever have like a moment during that specific season where you were like, I feel old, like in the aspect of, I don't feel like I can, like, can I keep up? Can I make it to the end of the year? Like, did you ever have like a moment where you were like, it makes sense that I'm going to be done in a couple months?
Yeah.
Like, we're good.
Yeah. And I think I was kind of well prepared for it after my injury, like knowing that, my body has gone through 2 major surgeries so far, and I'm 21 years old. Like, I think I already knew that my body couldn't handle another season after that. So like I already like went into the season knowing like, I probably won't be able to keep up as well as I did, but the start of season, you're always on a high. Like, you're excited to go, your adrenaline's always pumping, so you're trying your best, you're doing all that stuff. So I think it was, I don't know, kind of halfway when I was like, I'm done after this. Like, it got to the point of not even just like physical exhaustion, but like the mental exhaustion of it too. And I think that was more of my break, because like I said, I knew my body wasn't going to be able to handle like another season or something like that. But I never thought my mind was going to give out on me before my body would, like, not that I lost the love of the game, but like, just so exhausted from it and wanting a break from it. I didn't think I would ever get to that point. And I got to that point a lot sooner than my body got to it that final season. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's kind of interesting because I feel like I was the opposite. So for me, I feel like my body gave out before my brain did, like my mind did. And that was like, I feel like that was a very difficult thing to handle when mentally I wanted so badly to be present and be a leader and be that, like, be 6 rotations on the court and do this and do that. And I wanted so badly to do it. And I had the time in my personal life, like, to make, to try to do this. And it felt like my mind was like trying to go, and my legs like wouldn't move. And so that was like that was a hard thing mentally to figure out, like, it was sad. I don't think looking back, like, I don't think I handled it gracefully by any means. And I was just angry. Like, I was angry at myself and at the world for, like, I wanted so badly to, like, to do something and to have something. And my body just, I just couldn't, like, physically, my body was like, you're done. Like, you're done. And I remember after, like, our season had ended and our careers were over, the relief that came over me mentally and physically, because mentally I could let it go now. Like, I could, accept it. That's what happened. And physically, the way I feel like I remember it so vividly in that moment, like, after the tears were kind of gone and we were, like, kind of accepting it and breathing through it, whatever. I genuinely could feel my legs just be like, oh, like, thank God, like, we're done. Like, that's a hard thing too. Like, I look back on it and I kind of laugh at it now, but, like, physically, like, it was so hard to accept that. Like, it was so hard for me, and it put me in, like, a kind of a, like, bad place mentally, I think. And being over a year now, like, I look back on it, I'm kind of like, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. But in that moment, like, when you're experiencing something like that, when you love something and you just feel like you can't keep up and you're behind, and, like, you just get angry. Like, I was mad and I was upset, and, like, you dream about your senior season, and for mine to go the way it did, I just mentally, I was like, I'm miserable.
Yeah. When I remember being so upset, like, for you, like, being my best friend, being a teammate that we played together all those other years, and I was, like, pissed off for you. And I think that showed in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think neither of our senior seasons, I think, went the way that we wanted them to, or had expected, or had dreamed of them. And there's a lot of variables that went into it, but kind of your way of saying, like, you were just angry. That's kind of how I was too. Like, there's a lot of things that just, like, bugged me and made my, like, it pissed me off. A lot of things pissed me off, whether it was, like, my own doing or someone else's doing. It just felt like a very, like, and I think part of it was, like, not wanting it to end. So, like, I was just angry at everything because I didn't want my volleyball career to ever end, because I never wanted it to. Yeah.
It's wild to think, like, if you really think about it too, like, we had something for so long and then it got taken away and we only got this much of it back before it was taken away again, like, COVID took it and we dealt with it. That was, the way that the cards fell, and that was fine. And then we got it back for we had this much time to soak up whatever else we could instead of having this much time over, 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. So that was difficult. I do remember that. And I look back on it now with a little bit of a different feeling than I did a year ago, but it was very difficult. But I guess just kind of to wrap up on us as individuals, or introduction episode.
Yeah.
What do you think now, being we've been out for a year, or volleyball's been over for a year and a half?
Ish, yeah.
Almost. And I've been a year out of college, and you're almost at a year out of college. So looking back on your career as a whole, let's say high school and college, what's one thing that I'm not going to say regret, but would maybe go back and change if you could? And what's something that you look back and will feel will always just kind of be that soft spot for you? You'll always be really grateful to have had that.
Yeah.
On the spot question.
Yeah.
I'm an interviewer. That's just what I do.
I guess my biggest regrets going back towards being in high school, I always I'm a perfectionist, never wanted to disappoint people. So I always was very hard on myself, and I wish I wasn't, because then it kind of gave me attitudes at times, and not necessarily issues, but attitudes towards teammates and stuff like that, which were completely unintentional and not directed towards them. It was just how I am as a person. And so I think at times it showed in college too. I think I got better at it, but I think that was one thing, being able to learn from my mistakes and being okay with them, because to this day I'm not okay with my mistakes, but knowing that volleyball is a game of mistakes, and I wish someone had taught me earlier how to handle them a little bit better. Because I think when I was really young, I didn't have great coaches. But then once I got to high school, I had really great coaches, and who kind of started to shape me as a better player and a better teammate. So I wish I had that a little bit sooner, but that's nothing I could have controlled. But my soft spot towards volleyball, I mean, it was my life.
Yeah, literally.
And sharing it with my mom, she was always there. Sharing it with my sister. I watched her play. She was my role model for it. So you're gonna make me emotional.
No, no. We haven't talked about this in a long time.
Yeah. I had some really special teams in high school, through club, that just pull my heartstrings when I think about them. Yeah. Because we did go through a lot, and just the people that I met. When I think back at all the tournaments, the long hours and stuff like that, it was worth it. Yeah, I would agree. I think the one thing I think I would change is I look back on definitely in college and in high school during club too. I didn't experience this too much when I was playing for my high school, because I went to a small high school and I just played for fun, I guess you could say, and because I loved it. And so I always felt during high school season, as frustrating as it could be, because we weren't great by any means, but I just felt more free, and it didn't matter that much. You know what I mean? When I look back on my club years, I was surrounded by people who have been in my life for well over a decade now. And I wish I would have let myself have a little bit more fun at times. Yeah. And it definitely translated into college. There were times where I was no one is taking this as serious as me. And, why don't they feel the same way that I do, and da-da-da. And I wish that there were just times where people in practice were making it fun, and I would have went along with it a little bit more. It always just felt like it's all I ever had. So I protected it so much that I took it too seriously at times. And on the court, for the most part, there was things that would happen that you were just
it was funny. Like, it was like, what the hell just happened? Like, and you're allowed to laugh about it. And there were a lot of points where I was like, no, get back up. We have to, do this, do that. And like, I look back and it's just like, at some point it's going to come to an end. And there was never a point in our collegiate career getting towards like the middle end of the season where we were going to make a run at a natty. So it's like, I wish I would have let myself kind of just enjoy it more, because I look back now, especially at my junior year, that was my hands down favorite year.
Yeah.
And I look back on that and I just wish I would have soaked up more of it. Like, I guess, especially not having that my senior year. So that's probably like my biggest regret. But I think the one thing that I look back on and genuinely makes me so happy and so proud is the way that the people I played with like shaped me. I feel like I said, I mean, you and I both had really good club experiences, which not a lot of people do. So I'm really grateful for that. And I still talk to those girls so much, and I watch them graduate college and get their like PhDs and stuff. I mean, like, they're like, some of them are like doctors and stuff. Like, it's crazy to like look at that and just be to have like that experience. I don't think everybody gets like being an athlete. You have this community that feels like a forever community. And I definitely have girls from Platteville that will stand next to me on my wedding day. And that is like an absurd thing to have. And lots of people get that from college, but I feel like have shared experiences like you, me, and our friend Taylor, the way that we can rely on each other when trauma-y things come up, things that from things that we both experience, I feel like is a really rewarding thing. And it's just volleyball created a community for me of people who went through the same things at the same time, and you don't get that with everybody. And so I'm really grateful for that, I think would be my answer. But just the people, like, it's crazy to look back on and be like, oh my God, like I'm meeting up over Easter with some of my club friends who I met when I was 12. Like, we're completely different people now, and we still make time for each other and talk about the good times when all we had were iPod touches and we were taking cam wow pictures and, you and I do that with college all the time. Like, I feel like every time we talk, it's like reminiscing about the good old days. Like, I don't know if you can be like 24 and be reminiscing about good old days, but we do. And and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that we get to kind of start this like next adventure a little bit, like talking about something that we both love so much. So with that, I'll let you, if you want to kind of talk about some things that we're going to kind of cover and kind of why we're doing it too, if you want.
Yeah. I mean, we're both huge Big Ten Wisco fans over here. We want to talk about some of the transfers that have been happening, because there's been some big discussion and big changes in the transfer portal for D1, which is really exciting and interesting to see what's going to happen with that. So that's something that we want to touch on. Also talk about, like, Nebraska's having a game in their football stadium, which is beyond
iconic.
So things like that, media marketing in the volleyball world, how much volleyball is growing with the pros, the pro volleyball coming to the United States, which is very awesome. I'm super excited to talk about that, because there was just the draft for what I'm blanking on the name, Athletes Unlimited.
Yep.
Getting to see that and watching some of the pros after college play. What else? I want to talk a little bit about coaching, because that's a huge part. Love Kelly Sheffield. Like I said,
oh my God,
Wisconsin fan till the day I die. There's also been some changes in coaching staff throughout all of D1 and the Big Ten. So like Minnesota getting a new head coach, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And just kind of our games of the week, players of the week, things like that, kind of how we can relate to some of their successes or falls. What else?
Yeah, and then when season gets a little closer, it'll be a lot of like preseason polls, And then we'll be able to cover games as those start. We'll do what we did again last year, us and our close friends and our boyfriends, which was just comedic to me. We made a bracket for the NCAA women's volleyball tournament, which more people should be doing.
Yeah.
That's our March Madness. So we'll do that again when the season's kind of getting close to that postseason. Another thing too that we're super excited to talk about is the SEC bringing back their conference tournament. And I won't get too much into it, because if I get started, I won't stop. But it's crazy to me that we never noticed that they don't do this anymore. Like, we do it at our level in the WIAC. So crazy to see that we've never even noticed that. Like, it's just Big Ten, Big Ten championship, whatever. And that's it. So pretty cool to see that too. So lots of exciting things to come. We're going to be doing it right here on YouTube. So make sure that you subscribe, turn notifications on if you feel like. We haven't quite decided what days episodes are going to be dropping, but once we get into the groove, it'll become consistent, at least until the volleyball season actually starts. We might have to change some things around just depending on, when games are and stuff like that, so we can get everything covered. But that's us, and that's a big part of why we're doing this. So we're excited to see who wants to join the conversation, and hopefully we can just kind of grow from here.
Yeah. I'm very excited.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody who took some time to watch and get to know us a little bit before we start talking about things that we don't really have a lot of experience in, especially because we did not play Division I volleyball, but that we love to watch. And we know a lot of people do too. This is such a growing audience. So it's important to us to be a part of the conversation, but it's cool to kind of kick it off a little bit too. Like, there's a limited amount of people who want to talk volleyball the way that they want to talk football and basketball. So hopefully this can just kind of grow, and we're excited.
Yes.
All right. So we will see you guys next week.